My name is Wesley Lewis. I used to work for Expression58 with Jen and Jona Toledo and Shawn Bolz, and with Bolz Ministries for a number of years. I am going to share my personal timeline of events, as well as information that I have gathered that will be important for the church to know. I was not aware of these horrific allegations that have come forward when I was working for all of these people. Had I been aware that these things were happening, obviously I would not have been working there. But I'm going to share my experience working for both, and I'm looking at notes here, so please forgive me. My response to the Toledo letter and a statement that was given by Jen Toledo that you can no longer find on the internet, that was given during the live stream. They have pulled it. I'm also going to respond to the Jeremy Butrous video. Jeremy was my direct supervisor and dear, dear friend at the time. He was actually like family. He was like a big brother, and I trusted him implicitly. And I trusted Jen and Jona and Shawn and Tari implicitly. I'm also going to share with you about a friend of Shawn's that Jeremy references in a video. And I'm going to give you some information about Jeremy and this friend that you should know. Now, I do believe Jeremy's victim statement in terms of what happened to him, but I'm going to get into why all of that is also problematic as well. Very problematic, considering the work that was being done with Shawn. Excuse me. And I'm going to share with you witness accounts that I have gathered, because when this letter from the Toledos came out, and then the Jeremy Butrous video came out, essentially saying that he knew that Shawn was completely perverted the whole time. When the Jen and Jona letter came out, and then the Butrous video came out, I went down the rabbit hole and I was not expecting to find what I found. I just wanted some basic information of who knew what when. I found a terrifying cave full of sewage, to put it lightly. And it's actually quite horrifying. I think horror is really the word that would be best used for what I have found. And I have taken some time to gather information and to pray, you know, through things with the Lord and seek wise counsel, because this stuff is way beyond. This stuff is way deeper than anybody thought it was. Like, we have just hit the tip of the iceberg with the stuff that Mike has released. Okay. Now, I can't share everything that I've been told, because some people don't want it to be shared. And some people want to share it in their own time. And some of it can't be shared in detail, because it's going to not, if I share things with you in detail, you're going to know who certain people are that were victimized. And I'm trying to protect people, including children who were victimized, from just their identity and their own pain and suffering. So I'm gonna go through all of these reasons, and I'm just gonna tell you why I believe, and I am putting my name out there and just doing this big risky video and spending hours and hours and hours in the last weeks working on gathering things for this video. Why I am doing this, because I believe that it is actually imperative for the physical, spiritual, and emotional safety of people. I actually think that there is quite a bit of danger out there. So I'm doing it because the Lord is leading me to do it, but I'm also quite motivated to do it for the safety of others. I'm very concerned. And I don't say that lightly. And this is not like a super fun thing for me to do. I mean, we're talking about people that I had relationship with for years, people that I spent time with, people that I traveled with, people that I went to their homes and celebrated birthdays with them. And this is painful. This entire thing is grieving. So please understand, there is no malice or desire for vengeance. I do want some form of accountability and justice for people that have been harmed. And I want some form of protection for the church at large. But I am grieved in doing this. I am not rejoicing as people that I'm exposing to see this video. I am grieved at how people have not repented long ago, because the Lord is merciful and compassionate, slow to get angry, right? And he's full of unfailing love. So there was time given. Time has been given with Bethel and with Expression, with Shawn, with Cherie, with Jack. I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you about Jack later. With Jeremy, right? Time has been given for repentance. It has been allotted. It has been given. There have been warnings issued, and repentance has not happened. And reform has not happened. But when I was praying about leaving Shawn's in 2021, and I did leave, because the Lord was like, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. One of the things that the Lord was speaking to me about was exposure and reformation. I was like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. But I was able to go back into my journal notes and find that. I'm like, I understand now, Lord. So this video is really based on Luke 8:17. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. This is just the truth. Jesus is the light. He shines light into the darkness. And when you turn the lights on in the room, if there's a mess, you're going to find it. And I would not have chosen to be the one to be a part of finding these things. This is not really super, super fun for me, but this is where the Lord has put me. And so here we are. So let's start from the beginning, and I'll walk you through some of these things. I will say this. When I got involved with this group of people in this church, I had no idea who they were. So I met Jen Toledo, June 29, 2012. I had reached out to her, having no idea who she was. And it's a long story. It's a long story for how I even got her information. But long story short, she offers me, my nonprofit, the use of the building to do ministry in, because the building is empty during a time frame when we are trying to minister to at-risk youth. Okay, so I run an organization that works with at-risk youth. She said, here you go, here's a key, go for it. We don't need the building. And I was like, that's awesome. You guys are amazing. That was June 29th, 2012. Okay. 2015, they have a new children's pastor on staff. That children's pastor reaches out to me. She says, hey, I heard you work with kids in the neighborhood. You want to bring some kids to Vacation Bible School? Do you want to help us with Vacation Bible School? I'm like, yeah, man, I love Vacation Bible School. Like, I've run Vacation Bible School before. Vacation Bible School is awesome. It's all up my alley. Like, it's all about evangelism. It's like my thing. Okay. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to help you. So I connect with Jen. Jen hands me the curriculum. I end up teaching the whole thing. I teach all age groups the whole week long. Friday afternoon after VBS, Jen offers me a job. She says, do you want to be the youth pastor? And I'm like, no, let me pray about that. Like, I was already ministering a lot with children and youth. I already was really busy and I was broke. Okay. I was doing all of that and I was working really barely putting food on my table because it was just me. So I was like, I don't know if I want to take on another ministry position. I also have no idea who these people are, right? I don't know who they are. And I hesitated to take the job. And I think there was some discernment there in terms of like something's wrong, but I wasn't sure exactly what was wrong. So I prayed about it. I met with Jen. I met with Jen and Krista Smith actually at the church. I met with Jen in her house at one point. I prayed about it more. And I really felt confirmation from the Lord that he wanted me to take the job, despite this little thing in me that was like, what is that though? Like, what is that feeling that I have? I don't know what that is. But the Lord told me to take the job. So I took it. And I got to know them quite well. And I got to know, obviously the whole team quite well, and Shawn. And when I took the job, he was still technically the senior pastor, although that changed very, very quickly after I came onto staff. And I was not aware of I really didn't know who he was, honestly. I knew that people liked him and that they had been running with him for a long time, but he was not my direct supervisor, obviously. If I was dealing with something with the kiddos and the youth group, I was talking to Jen. But there was a large staff meeting right after I came on staff, all about his stepping down and other aspects of things, because there were all of these people ministering in West Hollywood, and there were all these men that, said they were transgender coming into the church to come to the service, and that was creating problems with the bathroom. So that was also part of the meeting. which is a whole different story, honestly. But I mean, it may perhaps an important detail as we talk about perversion in the church. So there was a very large meeting and there was no way, not everybody was on paid staff. There was many volunteer prophetic people there and pastoral people there. It was like, there was like 30 people in the room. And I had just come on staff. I was like, what is going on? So he announces that he is stepping down to focus on his ministry. And he continues with the church, though. I don't believe paid. I mean, perhaps he was paid. My understanding is he was not, but he was still definitely on the board. He was still definitely having executive team meetings with Jen and Jona and Cherie. He was still speaking every month because he brought in the people. I mean, people came to see Shawn. Okay. Now let me just show you, Jen and Jona released this written statement. And then she did speak February 1st of this year, or obviously this year. She spoke at the church in between worship and announcements, and it has been removed. You can't find it now. So it's a little weird because it contradicts, like I said, some of the statements. But let me just show you this little clip so you can see where they cut it, because I listened to it during the live stream, and now you cannot find it.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Good morning.
Okay, there it comes. It's like, just like all of a sudden she like looks at her notes. See, that was when she went into this lengthy statement. It's like, I mean, not insanely long. It was like 20 minutes about Shawn and how we heard this, and then we didn't hear this, and then we were looking up this, and we watched this video, and it's very concerning, and it contradicts the initial written statement, because the initial written statement is like, we knew nothing until the Mike Winger video came out. And I was like, this is impossible. There's no way that you knew nothing. So I responded to their video, to their initial statement very bluntly and boldly and loudly in email. So essentially telling them that I don't believe them and that I'm horrified by the entire situation, and urging them to repent and tell the truth. And then she releases this statement on Sunday, and what she says, I can definitely tell she's read my email, right? Monday morning, I get an audio message from Jona, kind of saying similar stuff. We didn't know this or that, and like we weren't actually as close to Bethel as you say we were. We were really close with Danny, and all of that is still problematic, okay? Because like I've been in Jona and Jen's house like with Danny. Like Danny's come to staff meetings to do trainings, and like, so either if Danny didn't tell them, that's a whole other issue. Okay. That's a whole other problem. Now, and I don't know, for those of you that are in ministry, okay, but this is how I do things in ministry. If you have a partner in ministry, or you know somebody else who's ministering to people, and you become aware of somebody who is very dangerous, you don't keep that to yourself. Right? It's not like you immediately go blast on the internet, but you better believe you get on the phone. Okay. And you be like, hey, that person that's been coming in, also working with the kiddos? Yeah, we're concerned about them. Don't let them in until we figure out what's actually going on. That's what actually happens behind the scenes. Okay. And we actually had a list at Expression. I think we actually had one for Shawn too, because people were really creepy about Shawn. They would show up and like stalk him, and it was weird. So we actually had a list at Expression of people with faces and names, and we were directed like, if you see this person, they need to leave. Okay, so normal practice is to warn other leaders when there's something wrong. So either if Danny didn't actually tell them, that's terrifying. I have a hard time believing that, unless they already knew and Danny knew that they already knew. I mean, there's people saying that Jona already knew, like a way long time ago. But again, I don't know that firsthand. Okay. But I believe that he knew. That is my personal opinion, that he knew. Okay. So 2015, Shawn steps down from senior leadership. He continues to be actively involved in aspects of the church. He attends church with his children and his wife. His wife serves in children's ministry. I work in the nursery sometimes with her and the toddlers. If they're in town, they're typically there. They're there in the church. Shawn is in the front, sitting in the front row with his wife, in the leadership seats. And people come for Shawn. So when Shawn speaks, people come because they're announcing it ahead of time online. Now, the crazy thing is, okay, all right. So I don't know the exact date that Jeremy got involved with Shawn. All right. I don't know the exact date, but I know he was involved, at least by Azusa. He was involved, and he was on staff at Expression also. So he was also working with the Toledos, trying to do like marketing things and sell coffee and stuff like that. And then he was working for Shawn, and he was working for Shawn. And in the statement, okay, they're stating that like they're not part of Bolz. All right. Maybe legally speaking, they're separate entities. Spiritually, these are intertwined entities. They are completely intertwined. All right. Even in terms of like where things are happening, because Jeremy is working for Shawn, and he says this in his video. And I remember it well because he was indeed working for Shawn in the back office, or I'm sorry, in the closet. So Expression58's building is very old. All right. It's from like the 1920s or something. It is like, you know, kind of falling apart, and they've done stuff to it to try to make it look like it's not falling apart, but it's old. Okay. Smells like skunk in the back, and, you know, like towards the closet in the back, and there's stuff underneath the crawl space, the basement's down there. So Jeremy would work back, and it was actually the children and youth ministry closet off to the side. They had a section, and they put a desk there for him, and all of Shawn's books were back there. And there was another staff member that would come and drop books off, and Jeremy would work there on his computer. And I know this because I would come into the children's ministry closet to gather youth supplies or print stuff out, because it was a large closet. So we had a big section where you had all of these supplies. We had a printer in there. We had all kinds of stuff going on in there. So I would go in there, and it was just basically like this very uncomfortable small room. And it was freezing in there in the winter. So he actually had connected a space heater down to the basement that came up into this little closet. And he'd be working on there for Shawn stuff. And I'd come in, and he'd be doing something on social media for Shawn, some Facebook thing where he's got Shawn prophesying in a video or whatever he's doing. And we would joke around about stuff. And that's kind of how I got to know Jeremy. So 2016, Azusa happens. And why am I not remembering where this was? It was at this massive, massive venue. Somebody drop it in the comments. Massive venue. There was like so many thousands of people there. There had to be like 80,000 people there. I mean, it was a huge event, right? So Shawn gets on stage, and I'm sure you've seen the footage by now. And I was there, like the whole church was there. Everybody was there. The entire charismatic church of California, and then people came from other places. We were there. And he gets on stage, and he starts calling people out, and they're like all the way across the stadium, right? And so people are like they're completely freaking out. So that was Saturday, right? Before church in 2016. The next day, okay, so that's April, in my notes, April 9th, 2016, all right? The next day at church, you know, I'm just getting ready. I'm trying to prep things for the kids. We look out the window, and there is a line, and it is wrapping around I don't even know where people park, because Expression doesn't even have a parking lot. They were always parking in like CVS and stuff. But it like is wrapped all the way around the block. And Jen comes in, she's like, we're going to 2 services, right? And I'm younger. I'm like, oh, yay, that's so fun. Like, but these other staff members that are like married with kids, they're like, no, like, but we did it. We did, you know, I was like, yeah, zealous for the Lord. Like, I don't have, you know, children that need naps. Like, let's go ahead and go to 2 services. So we go to 2 services. And after that, that was pretty much like the explosion. That was the explosion, right? And so of Shawn's, that was really when it happened. It took off because Bill Johnson got on that stage, and he just like talked about Shawn like he was the Apostle Peter. Okay. Like, so, I mean, we just were all like, whoa, that's amazing. And that was one of the reasons I trusted these people too, honestly, because I didn't know Expression coming into this, but I knew Bill, like I knew of Bill, and I knew of Bethel. And I loved Bethel. So I was like, oh yeah, these are like Bethel people. They were like really good friends with all the Bethel people. You know, the families play with the other families. And I was like, yeah, this place has got to be legit because Bethel likes these people, right? So Shawn, you know, his thing explodes. All right. 2016, I don't remember the exact, I think it was it was either late 2015, early 2016. Shawn has his major book launch of that Translating God book that apparently Jeremy wrote. And I do believe that Jeremy wrote most of these books, actually, because if you talk to Shawn and you have like, you know, casual conversation with him, it just doesn't sound like he wrote those books. Jeremy is actually a brilliant man. He's an exceptionally intelligent, very good writer, although problematic. I'll tell you why, but I actually believe that he did write that book. And Jeremy, so that book launch happened, of course, in the Expression building, right? So not only are his staff working in the Expression building, they're launching his book, they're promoting his book and his conferences from the platform. So it's after the service, Jeremy ran the whole book signing. I remember there was a huge line, okay? Huge line. They sell these books from the bookstore. Shawn signs them. It's a really big deal. Now, Jeremy was on staff at this point at Expression, and then all of a sudden he kind of just disappeared from staff meetings. So I don't know exactly what happened. There was another staff member that stood up at one point, and he said, he made some reference, and he was like, I don't like how things went down with Jeremy. And I was kind of like, what is he talking about, right? But I was just trying to mind my own business. I was like, okay, well, Jeremy is like the bookstore coffee guy, whatever. Like that doesn't, you know, whatever's going on, I don't need to know about that. So I didn't ask questions. Something happened. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you right now, he did not like the Toledos for as long as I knew him. And he has made that clear in many of his recent videos that he does not like them. So I knew there was something wrong. I just didn't know what it was. Eventually, Shawn, you know, gets an office. And so Jeremy does transition at some point out of the closet into the office. Now, in 2016, after the release of the Translating God book, they have decided to do a children's book, right? So Shawn is crowd fundraising, or however, he was doing some kind of online campaign to fundraise for this book. And they release the book, and then they decide that they're going to do children's ministry conferences. And of course, the first one was in the Expression building, right? So Jeremy, since he's in the building and I'm in the building and I'm working, he just comes up to me one day and he says, hey, do you want to host for the Growing Up with God conference with the kids? And I'm going to show you a picture of this. Okay, so I'm not in this one, but there's Shawn and Cherie. I've covered little faces of children that, some of them that I know. So this picture is a little upsetting, but you can see it says May 14th, 2016 in Glendale. This is at the church. They had this really cute little setup and stuff like that. And they brought all these kiddos in. And essentially what they asked me to do was come in and open the event with games and music and all kinds of stuff. And then there were going to be breaks in between, and the kids were going to eat snacks, and Shawn was going to come back out. And I mean, it sounds like now we're learning that he was back there looking for people's information or something. I don't know what he was doing, but maybe that was it, unless he had done the mining prior. But this was the first event that I was brought into, and I was paid separately because Expression was paying me out of the Expression account. Shawn was still signing my checks. Or at least his signature was, printed on my checks at that time. But this was the first check I got that was from I Create Productions, okay? Because Bolz Ministries, this is what you need to understand, okay? Bolz Ministries and I Create Productions, they're intertwined in the way that they work. But I Create Productions is a for-profit for events and books. And then you have Bolz Ministries, which is the nonprofit side of it. Where Shawn was releasing free stuff like YouTube and all the podcasts and stuff like that. So they pay me through iCreate because this is a for-profit event. And I honestly, at the time, didn't understand the difference between all of the different, I didn't understand what was going on. They gave me a check. Okay. I had fun. I ministered to children. I loved the children. And I thought, it was great. So ongoing, I'm still the youth pastor at Expression while this is all happening. Okay. 2017, I'm still on staff at Expression. Jeremy asked me to help with the second Growing Up with God Kids conference. I do that. And then, so we've had 2 Growing Up with Kids conferences at this point. And of course, there's been, Shawn's having his own events and he's doing his own speaking engagements and he's coming to church. And after this, as we get into 2018, that's when Jeremy starts to really invite me into the travel. So they start traveling to like Dallas and Denver and Washington and different places doing these children's ministry events alongside, what were they doing? Was it God Secrets? I think it was the God Secrets conferences, because they had released the God Secrets book by then. So they were doing God Secrets conferences alongside the Growing Up with Kids conferences. And so Jeremy, had asked me, hey, will you travel to such and such place and host the kids ministry or the Growing Up with God conference. And I'm just going to pause it for a second so I can find this next photo for you. Okay, so here I am at one of these children's events in 2018. I honestly lost count of how many there were. There were so many of these events. There was a lot. So then here's, after one of these events, here's, Shawn, you were amazing. You always are. Oh, add so much value and love and leadership. Thank you. And then he asked me for pictures. Now, these were such cute pictures at the time. It's like, oh, how cute is this? Shawn is surrounded by hundreds of children learning about the prophetic. Now these pictures are actually infuriating. They were already infuriating right after the release of Winger's video. They were more infuriating definitely more infuriating after Jeremy's testimony, for a variety of reasons. And you're going to ask me, a lot of people are going to ask me, well, have you spoken to Jeremy? And the reason, and the answer is no. And I have not spoken to Jeremy since 2021 when I left. The reason I have not spoken to Jeremy is because I believe it is not in my best interest to speak to Jeremy. I'll tell you why later. But I also believe that it would significantly impede the release of a lot of information I'm going to share with you in this video if I spoke to Jeremy before the release of this video. So I have not spoken to him. But with these photos in mind, I want you to, for those of you that have seen Jeremy's video, if you have not seen it, I will help you. So Jeremy gives a timeline of very, very disgusting things that he's witnessing from Shawn. All of the allegations that you've heard already, about, Shawn being nude, Shawn doing things to himself while he's nude, really, really yucky, icky things. He also shares a story that's even more disgusting that happens in a Korean bathhouse. If you want to hear about that, you can go watch it. I don't really want to repeat it. But the timeline that Jeremy is giving, people need to understand the timeline matters, okay? This is happening towards the beginning of time that Jeremy is on staff there. So he references his divorce. I didn't know his first wife. I knew he was married at the time that I was working with him in Expression. And I knew that there was a different wife by the time that I started traveling with them in 2018, because obviously I was there with her and she was frequently with us. He references his divorce according to public record. Like he says, it was in 2017 that he went into Shawn's guest house where the bathhouse incident happened. He was invited to the bathhouse in 2017. This appears to be correct based on public record. Now, it usually takes a little while for to go through a divorce. I mean, it doesn't happen like in 2 weeks. So at some point prior to that divorce, there is some creepy incident in the bathhouse. And prior to all of that, there's other instances of Shawn doing yucky things in front of Jeremy, right? While they're traveling in hotel rooms and all kinds of gross stuff like that. So we can presume, based on the timeline given, that at the very least, Jeremy was aware that Shawn had perverted issues prior to the third children's conference that we put on, okay? Probably by the second at least. But the timeline sounds like he knows about perversion as he starts working with Shawn, which would have been around like 2015, I think. Unless he goes back further with Shawn, and I don't know. I know he met Shawn prior. Well, that's a different story. I'm not going to share that story. That's not important to the to the information on the internet for the internet. So, but he was aware that Shawn is perverted, okay, as he is building this ministry. And I want you to understand, I want the listener to understand, Jeremy was not just an employee. He was not just somebody who worked for Shawn. Jeremy built the entire empire, okay? He built it and he was good at it, okay? Jeremy is a brilliant, brilliant man. He has a lot of different attributes that Shawn recognized in him, that we all recognized in him. And Shawn put Jeremy in charge and handed things to him, and Jeremy built it very successfully. He made it a well-oiled machine that ran and that brought in donations all over the world, and that brought in big, big, big revenue, like Jeremy details in his video. Jeremy also says in his video he wasn't making much. I find that very hard to believe based on things I've seen and on information I have from others. I don't know how that would be possible. Now, whether or not he was making enough in comparison to how much he was bringing in for Shawn, that's subjective, right? I mean, we could argue different things about that. But there was money, okay? And Jeremy was making money. There was money coming in that I would argue would be motivating for most people to stay. It's a lot of money. So he builds this empire. He plans these events. He builds the e-courses. He writes the books. He, brings people onto the teams. He schedules the tours. He staffs the tours. He directs us where we're going to go, when we're going to go, what we're going to do, who's going to be working what, whether it's the resource, book table, the check-ins, the ticketing stuff. And he was in charge of who was going to go where. I mean, if you wanted to go on a trip, you were just kind of hoping and praying, like, well, I hope he picks me for that one, or hope he picks me for that one. And like, because he would send some of us ahead. So if we did a tour like back to back to back to back, like in Texas or wherever we're going, or in Northern California, you had to have people going ahead to the other venues so that they could set up and work with the volunteers to pack all the bags. Which another weird thing about this is that, like, I always thought it was weird that we had volunteers packing bags for events that were bringing in anyway, that's a whole different thing. But, he would send one of us ahead to different venues. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So 2018, he brings me in, okay, to the children's ministry events. I end up traveling to different cities in the U.S. He asks me then to go to, I believe it was England first. The other part of the team was in London. And then I was in, Manchester. I was in Manchester prepping for the kids event and then hosting the kids event. And then they came in the day before, I think, of the kids event, or I think it was the day before. So, and then we did this big kids event. And then I was also asked to go to Australia. Australia's stunning. I didn't, have any idea how beautiful Australia was until I got there. We did a kids event there as well, in Brisbane, Australia. This is all in 2018. Now, this is where like the issue really lies for me after watching Jeremy's video. So a couple things. Number one, he's building the empire after he knows that this man is perverted. This is the issue. Do you see where the issue is? Does anybody else see it, or is it just me? Trying to understand, like, at what cost are we building this ministry? Like, what is the cost at which we are building the empire? Like, who is going to be hurt in order for the empire to be built? Okay. So this is so gross. When Winger's video came out, I listened to the whole thing. It took me a few days. And I just thought I was going to throw up, because what essentially I'm hearing in the video, which is, what happened, is the assistant, this is in 2018, is with us And this is happening to him while I'm in England and Australia doing children's ministry events. So I am setting up the room. I'm gathering all these kids. I'm hyping up the kids and the parents. Yeah, we can all hear God. God is awesome. God loves you. Yeah, let's sing some songs. Okay, Shawn's going to come on out and he's going to teach you about hearing God's voice. Woo! Yeah, like, do you understand how as a children and youth minister, I'm having like a major problem with this? Just with the information that Shawn is doing things with adults, okay? We're going to get into the other stuff later. But this is a problem for me. And like I said, I have not spoken to Jeremy directly because I don't feel like it would be wise to do that. I will speak to him at some point if he wants to. I have brought him before the Lord and I'm working on releasing him from this. But I will say that horror, fury, righteous anger, disgust, all of these things as I'm looking at images that I took of Shawn surrounded with children, knowing that Jeremy knew that this man was, I mean, let's just be honest, okay? If there had been criminal charges filed for the things that are alleged, and they had gone to court and there were convictions for these things, Shawn would literally be on a list, okay? Now, so he would just not even be allowed in the room, let alone on the stage. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? I don't think anybody is really understanding, like people are not seeming to grasp the severity of this issue of, I know the man is a sexual deviant. Let's plan children's ministries events that he is in charge of. Let's staff them. Let's bring the Expression youth pastor in to host them. The youth pastor that also runs a nonprofit for at-risk children and is an advocate for children. Let's just do that. So this is horrifying. You should be horrified. I'm horrified. Like, where are the people that are horrified? Okay. So we do these children's ministry events. We get back from Australia. And I think at this point, it was sometime, I don't remember the exact time frame that I stepped down from Expression58, but I did step down at one point. I'll show you Jen praying me out. She's praying me out. I have stepped down from Expression. I am still a parishioner at Expression. And right around this time, a similar time frame, I'm traveling overseas with Shawn. And then we get back from Australia. And then things get really weird. Okay, so we get back from Australia. I go home. I keep doing my thing. I keep, working side gigs to pay the rent. I keep ministering to kids. September 2018, Jeremy calls me kind of like panicking. Okay. Like, can you please come into the office? Like right now, please come into the office and help me. And I'm like, dude, I'm the kid lady. Like, I don't do the office. I've never been in the office before. And so I'm like, why do you want me to come in? He's like, please, I've lost like all my staff and I need you to come into the office. I don't know what he's talking about. Okay. So I feel bad for him. Like by now, like I know this guy, he seems like a nice guy, starting to like think he's pretty cool. I'm like, okay, fine. Like I'll come into the office for like a couple days. Like, and I'll help you for a little bit. All right, that didn't happen. That progressed. Now, what had happened, and I didn't know all of the drama that had happened by any means, but the assistant had quit. They had fired others. And so when I got there, there was one woman left and she was clearly stressed out. And I don't know if she quit or if they let her go like several days later. But, he brought me in and I was helping with a variety of different things. I mean, he had me doing all kinds of, and he liked me because I was like pretty chill. I was like willing to do whatever. So, you wanted me to answer emails, I would answer emails. You wanted me to put books on the bookshelf, I'd do that. So I think at one point he had me like counting wristbands for an event. Then he brought me in to help with the Imagine conference because I had started to kind of learn how to do the book table a little bit while we were overseas. They had kind of wrote me into that since I was there anyway. I was like, sure, why not? and I'm contracted, right? So they're paying me as a contractor, and I actually, ironically, I ended up being paid as an invoicing contractor until like at some point in 2020, which just like killed my taxes. And of course, I didn't know that was illegal until later, but eventually they put me on staff when I like begged to W-2 me, because that just killed my 2019 taxes. But anyway, so they bring me in, and at this point, I'm just kind of coming in, here and there, a few days a week. Started to progress into like, oh, Wesley kind of just like works here now, right? I don't know how that happened. It just kind of happened. And, they hired more staff. And he, like I said, he liked me because I just could do whatever. And I could learn things pretty quickly. I picked up pretty fast, and I took instruction pretty well. And I'm a hard worker, they weren't paying me much, but I'm a hard worker. So as time progresses, I am, roped further and further into these events. And I don't want to say roped, because I actually was enjoying my time there. I was enjoying time with the coworkers. I was getting to know Jeremy and his wife quite well. We were developing strong friendships. We were traveling together, and I actually was having fun. I was kind of into it. I was like, this is so fun, like friends, community, travel, ministry, watching people worship God and get touched by the Holy Spirit. And I was into it. So I can't say roped in, but I, was good at what I was doing. I was willing to work for, less than I probably should have. And I was, they just brought me in. So Jeremy kept bringing me into these events. I started progressing to where I was in the office pretty much every day, almost every day, maybe 4 days a week, sometimes 5. And we were doing, 2019 was like the year of like my heavy involvement. So 2019, we start to do the night in the prophetic tours. We would go on these tours where you hit like multiple cities in 1 week, like boom, 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 back to back. And so I was traveling with them. I was also one of the primary things that Jeremy had me doing. I mean, I was doing a lot of stuff, but one of the primary things that Jeremy had me doing was the marketing lists. And the marketing list, and I wasn't the only person that did this, but I was one of the primary people that did it, is we would pull. He told me, okay, go on to Global Legacy. I think it's like globallegacy.com or .org, or I don't know. It's a Bethel network of all of these different ministries and churches. And so they're like-minded movements. And so we would pull, he said, go into Bethel, and search within the radius of X, I don't remember how many miles, like 60 miles or something, and find churches that are near the church or the venue that we're going to go to. And then you're going to call the church. You're going to offer the church these promo codes for their pastors and free seats for their pastors. You're going to send them the marketing material and the video from Shawn. You're going to offer them these tickets, and then you're going to ask them to promo it to their church. And this was actually quite effective. It was quite effective marketing strategy. Like I said, Jeremy's a pretty smart guy. So we did that. And of course, he was running Facebook ads and whatever else he was doing to sell these tickets. And so he put me in charge of building creating ticketing pages. So they originally had their ticketing pages through Eventbrite when I first came on. And then he wanted to switch over to, it was a platform called Simple Tix, Tix. Okay. And so he, pulled this website. He's like, okay, take a look at this website so you can figure out how to build the ticketing page. And then he wanted me to test, this is important. And I didn't think that it was important then, but I believe that it is important now. He wanted me to test if, when we sell these tickets, if I am able to download a spreadsheet of the guests that have the full name, the phone number, the address, like all the information of the guests. So he wants to know that we can have that list each time. And I'm like, okay, whatever, who cares? Like, we have a list of attendees, like everybody who has events has a list of attendees. So yeah, I do a test email. It comes through that we can put a name and information on these tickets. So I build out these ticketing pages for all of these different events. And I was requesting graphics from the graphic person. And Jeremy would review all of the information I put on there, and I would send it to him, and he would say, okay, put it live. And then the next one, put it live. And we'd have the capacity of the venue that we could go to. Now, there were other people working on finding the venues. I did that a little bit, but not very much. I mostly did the marketing and the website and some of the partner stuff and a lot of the travel. But there were other people that were in charge of finding the venues that we would go to. And a lot of times we would just call churches that had already requested us to have Shawn speak, but we'd only call the churches that had large capacity, right? So we would have this massive list of invitations from churches and ministries all over the place, all over the world, for Shawn to come and speak. And so, but you could see, how many in the inquiry, you could see how many their church would seat. So they had to seat at least around 900 for Jeremy to consider that church, because we had to be able to fill the whole thing. It needed to be a large event, right? Selling lots of tickets over here. And general admission tickets, if I'm remembering correctly, were about $29. The premium tickets were about $59. And they came with like some different materials and resources. And you were supposed to be able to come in and sit down earlier. And it was a lot of revenue. Each event was a lot of revenue. So, I mean, it depended on the night, but like one night, like 40 grand, something like that, quite a few thousands of dollars, approximately, something like that, depending on where we were and how large the venue was, and all of those, and how many tickets we sold of the premiums and stuff like that. So it was a very well thought out, and it functioned quite well. And those events actually sold out to where a lot of them were full, and it was even hard just to get into the room. So this was very, this particular year, it just was exploding. It was, we were just all over the place. We were in Canada at one point as well. So it just kind of progresses, and we get involved. 2000, we're also doing these other weird events. I thought these events were strange. These are the Kingdom Business Luncheons. And this is where Bob Hassan kind of gets involved. He shows up on the property one day, and I don't know who Bob Hassan is. I still don't really know who Bob Hassan is. I'm just going to tell you a little bit of what I do know. He shows up on the property kind of all of a sudden one day, and Shawn introduces him to us. And apparently he's a friend of Shawn's. He's a big business guy. And apparently he's super wealthy, which kept being referenced time and time again about how wealthy Bob was. But, he gets involved, and he seems to be helping with like some of the financial stuff. Like because Jeremy is always in those financial meetings, and then Bob starts getting involved in the financial meetings, and I don't know what all is going on. But anyway, they start doing Exploring the Marketplace podcast and bringing Bob into that. They start doing these Kingdom Business Luncheons. And like I said, I thought these events were so weird and overpriced. Because it was supposed to be like a smaller gathering to where, Shawn and Bob and other people would talk about business stuff, kingdom business stuff. And I didn't, it's just not it's not up my alley. I don't really know anything about that. Okay. So they would do this, and we'd have these large luncheons, and some of them they just seemed odd because like we had all of these like wealthy businessmen. And initially the tickets were for $250, which is so expensive for like a 2.5 hour lunch. And the lunch was like really cheap food, and it was like not enough coffee. And I remember one time we weren't even like, Jeremy wouldn't even let us bring in filtered water. So I bought filtered water because I felt so bad giving these like executives sink water. And I don't know, it just all felt like very thrown together, and then the tickets wouldn't sell. So then Jeremy had me texting Chris Overstreet from Bethel, because apparently he knows this guy, just asking him. And I'm not saying Chris is involved in anything shady. I don't know him at all. Okay. I'm just saying he's some friend that Jeremy had over at Bethel, and he was asking him to refer. He's basically saying like, do you have people that want to come to this Kingdom Business Luncheon for free? Right. So we were essentially just giving away tickets, which was also really confusing. So we were trying to fill these Kingdom Business Luncheons. And then there was also this one time where like Jeremy was mentioning a sponsor. There was some kind of sponsor for one of the Kingdom Business Luncheons who was paying for something. We had to have brochures printed, advertising something for them last minute. So there was always kind of like weird things happening that I didn't understand. And I just kind of like followed instructions like, okay, I'll print that out for you. Here's that, here's this person says they'll come, I didn't understand what exactly was going on. So then we have the Modern Prophetic Symposium, which is in Dallas. I'm trying to find the date on this. Give me 1 second. Okay. May 30th to June 1st, 2019. Here's a picture of the inside of this event. It was just a massive event at this huge theater. I can't remember the name of the theater in Dallas, Texas. Just a huge, where you would normally have conferences, sorry, my dog, where you would normally have, not conferences, like concerts, like from secular artists and stuff like that. Now, the weird thing about this event was that we planned this out, and it was supposed to be like this massively quick selling event. And we couldn't sell tickets to the, we're selling some tickets, but we couldn't fill this venue up. And so what ended up happening is that Jeremy said, I want you to reach out to Lifestyle Christianity and basically invite all of their students to come for free, because we have to fill this venue. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. Cause like I was more into like the free stuff. Now, for some reason, whenever we did free stuff, we still had lists, which I thought was weird. Cause I was like, can't we just tell people to come? Like, and then just come. But he basically was like, we need to have a registration. Okay. There has to be a registration. We have to have a ticketing page where they get free tickets. So I reach out to Lifestyle Christianity, and he wants a list. So I compile this large spreadsheet of all of these invited students and their phone numbers, their names, and I put it on a spreadsheet that I share with him. And whenever somebody checks in, I mark the name. He wants me to mark the name for who's there. So I do that, and we have all these students come in. And we had amazing volunteers too that were helping me throughout the entire event. We essentially, there were not enough staff members on this event. It was like our entire team, but this was a massive event. And so I was running everything I was recruiting all the volunteers, running everything with the volunteers. And these were such amazing people. You guys, if you see this video and you were there with me in Dallas, you're amazing. Like, you made the whole event for me. So just people that really love the Lord with servants' hearts, really, really sweet people. So I had fun working with them, and I ran the book table. I ran stuff for the volunteers, and I enjoyed bringing people in for free. There were some weird things about this event. There was a room for special guests, like a green room, and it was very much nice, very nice food. And then he wanted us to have the volunteers like in the hallway with a table, and I remember I was always like, this isn't enough food for the volunteers. And I almost bought food myself at one point, because I was like, this is not enough. I just felt really bad, like the way that things were handled with that. So it was really stressful, but that aspect was stressful. There were weird things like that I didn't understand. Like, why is there not enough money to feed the volunteers? Jeremy seemed really stressed out about budget. And I don't know, I would imagine there was pressure from the top, because again, we weren't selling tickets, right? So he was really stressed out about budget. And there was a reference to sponsors, and I don't know who these people are at all. I saw them in passing, but there were all of these, dressing rooms downstairs, and each different artist or speaker had a dressing room. And there was big names, we brought Upper Room in, we brought Chris V in. What's the other guy? Paul Brevier. Is anybody? I think that's his name. Like, big speakers. We brought in Cindy Jacobs was there. There were big speakers there. We actually gave Cindy Jacobs this award. Shawn wanted to give her this prophetic award. I didn't even understand what it was, but he had me design it. Like, you have to go online and like have these like trophies made and stuff like that. So I had this trophy made for her that he presented to her. And anyway, so there we had these sponsors, and they had a room, and we were told that the sponsors were supposed to have whatever they wanted. So, it sounded like they were sponsoring the event, or they were donating towards the event, or the use of there's something. They had some involvement in assisting with the event. But again, I don't know a lot of but see, these are all like weird little details that come to mind later, like after the fact, like when all of this weird stuff is coming out, this information comes out, like it comes back into your brain for some reason. Now, the other thing that was really weird that happened at this event was I was out at the book table and somebody came out that was manifesting a demon, and I was renouncing stuff with them and casting the demon out. And Jeremy had told me to put the books away because it was the last night. And while I was casting this demon out, he just like kind of looked at me like, hurry up. And I was like, he didn't say hurry up, but he's kind of giving me this look like, I need you to hurry up and like finish that and put the books away. And we were just like, and I just thought that was weird because I was like, I mean, isn't like the whole point of what we're doing here to minister to people? So like this person has a demon, so I'm getting the demon out. And once we finished that whole night, we were just racing to get out. I mean, he was like literally almost running to get out of the venue. And he was talking about how it was going to cost so much money if we didn't get out of the venue at a certain time. So I don't know what was going on with that. There was some weird financial thing going on with the venue and the sale of tickets. And I'm sharing this because I feel like later, as more people come out with information, this stuff will actually matter. And we can start to put the puzzle pieces together of all the weirdness that was happening. Now, late 2019, early 2020, we're planning a European tour, or maybe it was we started planning it early 2020. I don't remember the exact timeline. This is all pre-pandemic, okay? So the world hasn't shut down yet. I mean, everything feels kind of fun. Like, yeah, we're gonna go to Europe, woohoo! I was excited, and by this point, my friendship with Jeremy was strong, like with him and his wife, and he's married. So I was never like hanging out with just me and Jeremy. It was always me and Jeremy's wife and he, or it was always me and Jeremy and several other team members. And we were developing a pretty close relationship that where it felt like family. It really did feel like family. It felt like it just felt like family. So we'd spend a lot of time together, also just outside of the office. And this is one of the reasons I just really trusted him. He invested time talking to me about things that I was concerned about. He invested time giving spiritual advice. He invested time giving family advice. I remember there were 2 years in a row, his wife and he took me out to dinner for my birthday. And we just started to get really close. The team, all of us started to get really, really close, especially like if you travel with people over and over and over and over and over again, and you go through stressful situations with people, because some of these events could be stressful. We're talking about like hundreds and sometimes thousands of people, right? So you're managing all kinds of different situations. And then you're also trying to keep an eye on where Shawn is because people were super creepy. And we had a security guard coming with us to a lot of these events too, because people were just weird about getting close to him. So we had stressful situations on these events. And when you go through stressful situations with people over and over and over again, and then you also go through like, woohoo, Disneyland with those same people, you just start to get close with these people. So I'm going to show you some images. Okay, so here we are. I think this is Phoenix. This is Phoenix. I remember because it was insanely hot when we went to Phoenix. So this is us hanging out, the day after all of the work. And we actually ended up going on a hot air balloon, which was really fun and insanely expensive. I just had no idea. Now, Jeremy's wife is in most of these photos. She was with us frequently, right? So by this point, as far as I understand from Jeremy's video, it sounds like, that weird, creepy stuff was done with him and Shawn, at least when we were traveling. His wife was, obviously, if she was traveling with us, she was rooming with Jeremy. So I was not aware of men sharing rooms with Jeremy at this point. But here we are on the hot air balloon. Like I said, I got to be really close with him and his wife. We developed a pretty close friendship. So, I mean, this is us on a trip. We also were spending a lot of time, outside of the office. Just just lots and lots and lots of, we were just really close friendship. So I'm sharing this with you to understand, like, when you become that close with people and people become like they really invest in your life, you really start to trust them. Okay. And so I'm looking back and I can see like little red flags as I look back, but I think that those red flags were not as loud as they would have been had I not had this really close-knit relationship with Jeremy and his wife. And I've covered his wife's face in all these. I'm not going to reveal her identity because this is not her issue, and he doesn't speak of her name and show her image. So just out of respect to her, I've covered her. So things, as we plan this European tour, the world shuts down, which is a bummer. Everybody's like, oh man, and then I remember this is when things really got weird. It got weird. And apparently by this point, according to witnesses, Chris and Danny had already come to Shawn's house, right? So I wasn't even aware of this. Apparently that was already happening in 2019 and in 2020. And then, the pandemic hits when we're planning this massive tour. And I haven't heard anything. I mean, we had allegations from random people on the internet that I had never heard any of the creepy sexual stuff. That I'd never heard any of that. I mean, I had definitely I would run the info@bolzministries.com email, and people would email us all kinds of weird people that were clearly in the middle of psychosis would email us. People that, were just desperate for prayer would email us. I would pray for them just via email. We would have all kinds of random inquiries, but we met people, obviously, if you're traveling, we would meet people that were not well from time to time. And we definitely had people that were cessationists that believed that Shawn was false. And I just discounted any testimony of anytime, if there's this video of a cessationist that was like, well, Shawn's false prophesying, I was like, well, you don't even believe that the gifts of the Spirit are real. So and it honestly never occurred to me that he would dare to do such a thing. It's so horrifying and terrifying to stand in front of a crowd of people and say something is the Holy Spirit when it's not. I couldn't even fathom that Shawn could be capable of such a thing. And my interactions with Shawn, just from my own experience, I had not seen firsthand or even heard of anything, that would imply to me that Shawn had a moral failure going on in his life. So, he was always very kind. He was always very gentle. He was always appropriate. He was very fatherly with my interactions that I had with him in Expression and in the office and on tour. He, would come out, like, hey, how you doing? How's your family? How are the pets? He would even ask about my animals, how's the ministry going with the kids? And he'd joke around with me because I was always drinking too much coffee. Everybody was always giving me a hard time about that because I really like coffee. Joke around with me about stuff like that. Him and Jeremy would tease me and be like, oh, the mother of the nations, it was like this, funny joke. And because I was like the kid lady, right? So my interactions with him were not inappropriate. I didn't hear any crude joking. I don't even think I can't recall one singular time that I ever heard Shawn even use profanity. His interactions with his children were nurturing, compassionate. The only time I ever saw him get slightly agitated was when his child was upset when he picked them up from Sunday school. That was the only time. And that was a very mild, he wasn't out of control upset, but he was, worried about his child. So I was not seeing anything from him personally that was concerning to me. So I just thought it was real. So, I guess I'm just really naive, or I was I just didn't think that somebody could actually do such a thing. It's just so disgusting and horrible. So anyway, I progressed with them. The pandemic hits. It gets weird now. Now it gets weird. Okay. So 2020 hits. I remember when the shutdown was announced and we're in the office. We haven't officially gone remote yet. And, they're kind of trying to figure out what to do, because you have to remember, we're selling these tickets for these events, long ahead of time. And and I can see it on the back end. All right. There's all this money coming through for these events. And we have all of these, I don't remember which cities were first. But Cherie comes back there with Shawn. So their property, their property was really interesting. They had a massive, and when I say office, okay, it's on the back of their property that also has their home. So they had a very large, I don't remember the square footage, but a very large home on a large lot in Studio City in a very, very nice location. And there was the front house, and then you would walk back, and there was so you have the front house, the backyard, and then you have, go past the house towards the staff parking lot. Behind the staff parking lot, you have this massive, studio with the offices, and then to the side, you have this very large guest house, 2-bedroom, 2-bath guest house where, Jeremy references staying, and people were staying there all the time. Sometimes they had family staying there. Bob stayed there a few times when he would visit from his residence. There were other leaders that would come stay there that I recall. Whenever we would do Love Coalition, which was like the Bolz Ministry thing where Shawn would bring all these leaders to his house for ministry for several days. We had childcare in that house with babysitters that we would hire. It was a lot of space back there. And then above the studio, there was an office, and there was a window that looked down into the studio from that office. And there was accounting people that worked up there. And then off to the side of the other offices, there was like a kind of like a kitchen area with more desks. And it was a big space. So when I say that they came into the office, what I mean is they walked out of the back door of their house, walked down past the backyard and the pool, and they came into the parking lot and they came into the studio. What I mean is they came from their house back to where we were. So they come out there, and Cherie wants me to pull up the ticketing information or the sales information for the first event. She wants to know the revenue for the first event. Because does anybody remember how the pandemic is announced and they're like, we're all shutting down for 2 weeks, right? And then we're like, 2 weeks is so long. Oh no, 2 weeks. So of course they're hoping and praying, I guess, or I don't know what they were doing, that we're going to be able to start the tour again after the planet opens up. So, but we're definitely going to have to cancel, the first round. So I pull it up. I don't remember the exact amount. It was like for that one night, that one event had brought in like 40 grand or something like that. And so she looks very upset when I show her, and Jeremy is standing there, and I can tell he does not want me to show her because like, this is not the kind of stuff, we didn't pull up all that information. Jeremy was always the one that would present that information to them separately. I was never interacting. It was so unusual for me to interact with Cherie and Shawn, especially Shawn. Like Shawn was not coming into the office giving us any directives. Jeremy was giving all the directives, and then he was going to he would meet with them separately and do their own financial calculations and their own business stuff and their own, planning and whatever they were doing. We were not involved in that. And so Cherie and Shawn were not coming back to the offices and the studio to give us directives. The only time I really saw them was when there was a staff meeting or when Shawn came out to film, because he would come out from the main house into the studio and close the studio door, and he would film in there and do podcasts and YouTube videos. And sometimes he'd have guests come speak. And it was always kind of a bummer because the studio, for whatever reason, I don't know why, was not soundproofed well. And so whenever he was filming, we had to be like so quiet, right? So I'm like, okay, I have to make my coffee before Shawn comes back here and starts filming. But yeah, so they would come back and film. And that was really the only time I saw them. I just didn't take directives from them. Typically they were never coming out and asking me to pull information up on my computer. I wasn't doing that. So I pulled it up. She looks distressed. She said something like, God help us, or something like that. So long story short, ironically, Shawn had said to us, well, I don't think anybody's going to get it. The irony behind that statement was that during that meeting, there was actually somebody in the room that already had it. So eventually we all go home. The planet shuts down. We all start working remotely. We all start doing our staff meetings remotely. Everything goes online. And the thing I think that was frustrating for me, and this was that these events, now we have all these ticket sales, and I'm running the ticket sales, right? So then they're telling me now we can't refund the ticket sales. We're going to move to online events, and we're going to mail them their products that they purchased if they bought premium tickets. And I was like, I don't think people are going to want, like, I mean, there's a big difference between going to a venue, physically going to a venue, having worship artists come on stage for worship, having your pastor there in your community and going with your friends and watching Shawn speak. And it's a very different experience than logging onto a like a webcam thing and watching him talk from his camera. It's just so different, right? So I'm like, people are not gonna, they're gonna want refunds. And of course we had people that wanted refunds. So, you know, they're emailing me and I'm like, Jeremy, these people want refunds. And he's like, you can't refund anybody unless you, like, you have to get my approval. So I'm sending him these emails, like refund request, whatever. And, you know, he's not allowing refunds. We're not allowed to refund people. So that I really thought was weird, like, or not just weird. I thought that was a problem. Okay. So this is when, like, my brain is like starting, my discernment is kicking up. My concerns are kicking. I'm starting the process of, like, I feel like something's wrong. I don't know if I like this anymore. But again, the relationship is strong. Okay. Really strong relationship. So, I'm trying to figure it all out. And Jeremy would make these comments too, kind of like that maybe something was off about Shawn and Cherie. And so I'm like, is the problem Jeremy? Is the problem Shawn? Like, I don't know. Trying to figure it out. You're feeling kind of confused. There was like a lot of confusion in the midst of that. And of course he had gotten also by this point, he had gotten the Corona word wrong and the Trump word wrong. And so people were mad, right? So we were losing givers. And Jeremy launches this platform called the mentorship platform, something like that. And the whole concept was like that you were going to be mentored by Shawn, but it was, I mean, I don't know why they worded it like that, because I mean, Shawn had videos in there that you could click on and you could ask questions, but then the questions were being answered by us, right? So like, I mean, if he was asking questions, there were other team members that were answering the questions. And it's not like we were telling them, like, I wasn't like typing like from Shawn, right? I was like saying from Shawn Bolz Ministry team. I mean, and, but I didn't really understand the mentoring, that language that we were using. And then we also had dream interpretations that were available. And those were, if you were a part of this program and you got your dreams interpreted, we had a solid person on that. So I would hold on to that. Anyway, that was what was going on. And so they were trying to bring in revenue from the platform. They were trying to bring in, keep the ticket sales with the online events. And then they were trying to do additional online events to bring in revenue. And I mean, honestly, the online events were boring. Like, I mean, it was just kind of like, I would help with some of them. It was just like kind of Shawn on a webcam, like talking, and I just thought they were boring. But anyway, we did those. I don't believe they were as expensive as the in-person ones. But again, you know, like if you're just logging onto a camera, it's a lot less expensive than flying people across the planet to set up for an event. So there's that. So okay, here we go. So this is where it gets really, really weird. It gets even more weird. All right. So in the middle of the workday, or actually I think it was like the lunch break, Jeremy calls me on the phone. Everything was always on the phone. It was never in writing. So he calls me, he says, hey, and now I'm going to mention this other name. Okay. Actually, first, hang on a second. I'm going to show you this video clip first before I show you this.
You know, the accusations started piling up against me. You know, I got an email one day of being accused of, you know, a million things. You know, I guess a former friend of Shawn's was borrowing money from a lot of people, including myself, and wasn't giving it back. And I got piled in, you know, with all the accusations. And I said, you know, I'm innocent. This has nothing to do with me. But they took it as an opportunity because they were looking for an out, you know. So they, you know, they pursued it, put pressure on me, and had me meet with their lawyers. And I ended up getting a couple lawsuits against me, and I had them dropped. They were dropped. You know, I'm 3-0 in terms of the lawsuits. And, you know, it was a year and a half or more of my life and money spent defending myself. But, you know, the truth came out. And, you know, they were just looking for a way to get rid of me.
Okay. So, I mean, the truth will come out. It's going to come out. It's going to come out little by little. I'm going to help a little bit, and then more will come out later. But he references a friend of Shawn's that was borrowing money. That's not really the right word. Yeah. So anyway, Jeremy calls me during lunch break and asks me if he tells me and Jack, now this is, for those of you that are wondering who I'm talking about, his name is Jack Grant Smith, okay? And he was a friend of Shawn's and Jeremy's. There's actually a book, I believe it's written by Bob, where Jeremy and Jack are both have their forwards on it. So can we just like put all the connections together now? So Jeremy calls me, he says, Jack and I are going to buy a hotel. And, you know, as some kind of an investment property or whatever. And I don't know anything about this, you guys. Like, I'm not a finance person. Like, I just work with kids. All right. And I'm just trying to pay the bills and do ministry. And I don't know what he's talking about. So he calls me and he says, Jack and I are going to buy a hotel. I can't remember where it was. It'll come up in one of the documents that I show you. But, and we want to know, and remember, I have a nonprofit, which is tax exempt. And he knows that my nonprofit needs money because I have come to him multiple times asking for advice on how to fundraise, because Jeremy's very good at fundraising. Okay. And actually his advice usually works. So, he says, Jack and I would like to know if we can put the purchase of this hotel through your nonprofit, and then we will give the nonprofit $30,000. Okay. All right. So now I'm on the phone listening to this. I'm like thinking like, I think that's illegal. I really think that's illegal. So I say to him, I'm like, is that like allowed? I think I said something like that. I could hear him on the phone realize that that whatever friendship he had developed with me was not going to be able to rope me into illegal activity. So I was like, well, let me ask my board, right? And he was like, well, we don't really, want to tell a lot of people about this, like who's on your board, right? And so, I mean, the whole thing was really weird. So of course I go to my treasurer. My treasurer's like, that's like, we can't do that. Obviously, Wesley, that's super illegal. And I was like, okay, that's what I thought, right? So, of course we told him no. He actually called me back before I could even tell him no, to tell me that, oh, Jack found another nonprofit. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I kind of put that in my back pocket, and, still concerned, but the friendship is strong. So by 2021, my discernment is kind of like, woo! Like my discernment is like really up there. I'm like really concerned. Okay. So the Lord is like basically like pushing on me, like there's a problem. And I'm like, I don't know. What is it though? Like what's going on inside of this organization? I don't know what it is. So Jeremy's acting weird. He's just acting odd. Shawn is bored and honestly just completely uninterested in everything that we're doing. Everything is about revenue. And then in the middle of all this, Shawn and Cherise sell their house. They move to Santa Clarita. And then I remember he tells me, we go to, where were we? We were at we were all at Universal Studios, a group of us, Jeremy and his wife and some of us. And he tells me that he is going to give his dog to one of my coworkers to take care of. And I was like, what? Because like his dog is like, he loves his dog. Like, I was like, what are you talking about? So they give the dog to the coworker, and then they leave their apartment in Beverly Hills. They don't renew their lease. And they just go, I don't know where they go. They go somewhere else. And they don't want us to tell Shawn and Cherie that they didn't renew their lease. And they don't tell us that like, they don't say like, oh, we're going to go to, so-and-so island, or I don't know where they went. Okay. They started posting all kinds of random travel videos on their travel channel. And then he would call me from like Google Voice numbers. And one time he called me, I think it was from China. It was like somewhere in Asia. This phone number comes in from China. So I didn't answer it because I don't know anybody who lives in China. And so he texted me, he's like, are you working? And I'm like, yes. And I was like, I don't have any missed calls from you. So then he sends me a Google Voice number. And so he's always talking through Google Voice. I'm like, what's wrong with your cell phone? He's like, I'm using my brother's phone. There's something wrong with my brother's phone, yada, yada, yada. And then he'll, log into staff meetings. And he's kind of like looking sunburned and he's sitting against a white wall. And I'm like, just thinking like, dude, where are you? Like, what are you guys doing? Right. And so he was doing all of that. And that's weird, that it's all like this big secret. And then, so my discernment, and then he implied to me one time over the phone with giving me zero details that we were essentially working for people that were immoral. And so now I'm like, okay, is it him or is it Shawn? Like, is it both of them? Because, and it's very confusing at this point. So summer and fall of 2021, all intermingled with what's going on. I started having really troubling dreams and visions about Shawn, Cherie, Jeremy, and Bob. And I start feeling nauseous. I'm reading my notes because there's just so much. Okay. I start feeling nauseous when I clock in. I feel a demonic presence when I'm on the clock, and I feel really confused and stressed, and I want to quit. So I am looking for my way out. Okay. I'm looking for my way out. Now, in the midst of all of this, I am learning, because I have actually, by this point, because I have trusted Jeremy so implicitly, I have a friend who has just come into this massive, or not massive, she has just recovered her stolen inheritance. And it has just been recovered after years of her attempting to recover it, right? And so, she knows Jeremy's a business guy who I speak so highly of. So I connect them. And so they get into this investment deal with he and Jack and Harvest Capital. And there are some concerns that come up with. So in the middle of all of this, I learn that there is an employee who has also invested $100,000 the year prior with Jack and Jeremy and Harvest Capital. And I'm going to show you guys some receipts, because I'm not just going to make these claims and, and not show you any receipts. So just for the sake of understanding relationship, you've got Jack over here. He's actually next to me in this picture. This, I believe, was in Michigan. Okay. So yeah, the date says March 11, 2019. He was there at an event. So around 2019, Jack Grant Smith, because the name is generic, does start traveling with us here and there, like as a buddy of Shawn's. And him and Jeremy are pretty buddy too. I don't know all of the extent of that relationship, but I know that they, knew each other and that they had some kind of connection that was not just inside of Bolz. So that's Jack right there. There's me and Jack and Jeremy and Shawn, and then I've crossed out a coworker's face. So he would come to some of these events, and Shawn would put him on the stage from time to time, and Jack would talk specifically about breakthrough in real estate and finance. Okay. So Shawn would, platform him as like this guy makes money kind of guy, it's always framed in the set of like, money for the kingdom, right? That's kind of how that was framed. So Jack is involved, with this, these are friends. And so Jeremy and Jack have this, or apparently, I don't know, who founded the company, but Jeremy and Jack are connected to a company that is called Harvest Capital. And I'm going to show you some documents that have that name on it, but there used to be a website. I am no longer able to find the website. When you go on the website, it no longer exists. And if you look them up on public records, the company is it's in the middle of liquidation. And then if you look up Jack on public records, it's really quite interesting. There are quite a few other financial companies that are identified in relation to his name. So, and quite a few of them have been disenfranchised. You can also Google Jack and find multiple lawsuits where he has been, one of them, I believe, is for mortgage brokering without a license. I mean, these are public records. They're not that hard to find. So here's another one. I don't know which city this is in. I mean, he was with us on several of these trips, but here, at the top, you can see Jack and Jeremy and Shawn. And then at the bottom, you can see Jack on the stage. I think he's on the stage with Shawn, but he's on the stage. So he would be platformed here and there by Shawn for a variety of reasons. I'm going to pause and pull up a few of these other documents that are important for you to see. So December 30th, 2020, 1:46 p.m. This is Jeremy's response to the person who ended up investing. Hey, hope you had a great weekend. Here are some things to review. I will call you in a bit to discuss. Sorry for taking so long getting things over to you. I was with my wife's family and we had several underwriter calls on our current projects that took all of my time. We have a ridiculous amount of documents from each property. If you want to check out some of the due diligence, I can let you in on that. We have a memorandum of understanding and contractual promissory note. Both have been fashioned by our counsel for you. We are currently under contract in a few properties with some of the individuals mentioned in our Harvest Capital overview that close very soon. Please don't reach out to them personally. We are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thanks so much, Jeremy, harvestcapital.org. All right. So the question or the claim has come up that, throughout this process and throughout legal proceedings that I am aware of, is Jeremy connected to harvestcapital.org and to Grant Smith? Okay, so what I'm trying to show you is this clear, documented connection. So I'm going to show you another interaction. This is Jeremy, who is the point of contact and who has been the point of contact with the Bolz employee as well regarding this investment. So this is from another person and I can show you paperwork from the actual lawsuit, but let's look at the interaction he has with this person. So it looks like this is around May 2021. So Jeremy is responding regarding how he's spoken about the transfer. And, this person is responding about the bank. And then he's confirming where the money is supposed to go to Chase Bank, Harvest Capital LLC or LIC, etc. Okay. So then we're going to look at the next one. Good morning. I am checking in with Chase to see if we can flag the wire on our end. So, I mean, it sounds like they flagged it because it's a significant amount of money. Okay. It's $90,000. And I'm going to show you that on a document in a minute. But this person obviously, is excited that this money is going to be wired. So let's look at this other interaction in an email. I'm sorry, actually, this is the physical wiring of the money. Okay, so here is the actual document to confirm the wiring of the money to Harvest Capital. All right. Now, again, let's just down here at the bottom, Jeremy is signing Jeremy, harvestcapital.org. Okay. There's also emails. I mean, Jeremy at harvestcapital.org from that email address as well. I've seen many of them. I've also seen one of them from a different employee that she sent me some stuff as well. And that employee did not invest, but did send me documentation. And there is Jeremy at harvestcapital.org. So he is the point of contact. He is the person in between people and Jack that's bringing Jack, at least the people that I'm aware of, that's bringing Jack. Now there has been another person. I'm not gonna. I don't actually know the exact date of this transaction. There has been another person that has come forward that I'm aware of. Does state that he did invest solely through Jack for $200,000, and he did not get it back. So we're talking amounts that I'm aware of $100,000, $90,000, and $200,000 tied to Jack Smith, and the $90,000 and the $100,000 are tied to Jeremy. Now, so he mentions in his video this other lawsuit, okay? Or these other 3, he mentions 3 lawsuits, right? He says, I'm 0 for 3. So I don't know what those other 2 lawsuits are. I don't know what those are. Or I don't know who filed those lawsuits. But here is the one. This is public record. I mean, you can find it online. Here is the, part of that public amended summons. I mean, there's tons of paperwork. It's all public record. You can find a lot of stuff if you do your homework. All right. So this is the problem. Now, and I'm sure you're going to ask, were things, they try to, work things out with people without legal stuff. Well, of course they did. That didn't work. So in I think it was 2021, late 2021, an employee from Bolz that invested $100,000, they go to Shawn and Cherie and tell them that this has happened. Okay. So they go to Shawn and Cherie and tell them that, they've invested this amount of money and they have not gotten it back from Jack and Jeremy. Jeremy references in a different video, about how Shawn and Cherie cut him out of business deals and stuff like that. And so, I mean, I don't know what else they know, and I don't know what all the details of what Jeremy knows about them, but I was told that Shawn confronted Jeremy and Jeremy quit. Okay. In one of Jeremy's other videos, he also references that he quit. So he left Bolz Ministries and I Create Productions at that time. Now let's go back in time just a little bit because I jumped ahead to the end of Jeremy's time there, but I actually left before Jeremy left. So I'm finding all of this information out, as I'm still there. I don't know the severity of the investment with the documents that I just showed you. I don't know that severity yet, but I do know that, there are some concerns, and I know about the other employee. I don't know about the employee that was approached at this time, but that declined. I found that out way later after I was gone. Okay. So, but like I said, at this point, my discernment is just, it's just going insane. So during this time, and Jeremy was starting to pick up on how I was discerning things. All right. So he asked me to be on Shawn's YouTube show. And I decline. I don't want to be publicly associated with Shawn at this point, and I'm looking for a way to leave. So I tell him, no, thank you. He thinks that's really concerning and weird. You know what I mean? Because, a few years prior, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds so great. Right. So I tell him no. And, Jeremy starts to kind of like in our conversations, kind of dig like to see what I know. And I just don't know things. I don't know things. I don't know about the creepy sexual stuff. I don't know about the false prophecy. I don't know that Bethel has done an investigation. Although by this point, I had heard through the grapevine at the office that Bethel had pulled his books and appearances. So obviously I was concerned about that because I was not given any, I didn't know what that was about. So yeah, I'm looking for a way out. Now this was the thing that really did it. This last thing I'm going to share with you. So they put an e-course on the platform that was available through the mentorship program. So I guess Jeremy wrote it because he said he wrote all the e-courses. That's probably true. And it's about deliverance. And they platform this woman with, supposedly with a deliverance ministry. Okay. Her website indicates that she's charging for these prophetic appointments and these deliverance things, which I was not cool with, obviously, because it's simony. So I get this email from this person at they email info@bolzministries.com, and they are inquiring about deliverance from this woman. And they're like, well, I can't afford $1,200. She put it down to $500, but that's still too much. So I'm like, what in the world? So I am texting Jeremy like, dude, no, I will not refer people to this person. I'm not doing it. So no. Okay. And I just told him my job now is in conflict of my morals at this point. I can't do this. So Jeremy says, let's talk later. They send me the email. And then he says, we should talk later about your job. So he doesn't call me, which is kind of weird. But again, I don't even know where he is because he's like all over the place. So I inquire of the accountant about my paid time off, leftover hours. All right. Because I'm going to quit. So as soon as I email her, like very quickly after I email her, I get a very panicked phone call from Jeremy. And he essentially is trying to like find out what I know. It's essentially what the tone of his voice is kind of like what's going on? Like, you don't want to be on Shawn's show. And, like, are you going off the deep end? He's asking these questions, am I going off the deep end? And when I had come on to work with them initially, it was implied to me that there was something wrong with that team. And I believed Jeremy because I had known Jeremy longer than that team, a lot longer, like for years longer than that team. But now I was like starting to wonder, I was really starting to wonder, like, what do you mean going off the deep end? Like, because that makes it sound like I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy because this woman is like trying to charge for prophecy. So I'm not crazy, not crazy. All right. So he, I don't know anything. So I don't have any information to give him, right? Except for I just told him, and he got really quiet after I said this. I just said, listen, I don't know what's wrong, but something is wrong and I have to go. That's what I told him. So I put in my 2 weeks notice. My interactions with him were very brief. The accountant got back to me, and it was not the amount of hours that I had been verbally told that I would receive. So I contested that. And Jeremy had been in the meeting where Shawn had told me about the hours that I would have. So of course I'm thinking, well, it's okay because Jeremy will tell them how many hours I'm supposed to have, but he did not. Okay. He emails back and, gives them the amount of hours that's incorrect. And I, I'm trying to leave as respectfully as I can. I gather all the information I had, passwords for different things. I put it all in a document for them. And he calls me at the end of my workday, immediately after I had clocked out, and basically saying, can we still be friends? Now, with the information that I have, I didn't believe that was wise at that point, obviously. And so I did say, thank you for the job, Jeremy, and goodbye. And that was the last time I've spoken to him. And, but I have been paying very close attention. And he went very, very quiet on social media for several years. Obviously, there were lawsuits being filed. I don't know what those other two are, but I know of one and the details of that lawsuit. So he went quiet. He reappeared again around like 2024, early 2025, started posting again online, different videos. And Jack also went really quiet on social media during that time. And, as more information has come out and I've heard more things, I felt the urgency to share this. So because it was actually Jeremy's video that prompted this video initially, because I heard him mentioning those things regarding lawsuits in there. And I was like, you're just going to have to say something. But I wanted to pray for quite a while and, make sure I actually had something to show you regarding this. So my understanding based on paperwork and witness statements, emails, text messages, public records, is that Jeremy was intertwined at least with Harvest Capital. I don't know where it went. Like I said, it's being liquefied. I don't know that Jeremy had any founding connection to it. I don't know if he founded it, but clearly there was a connection to it. And a connection to Jack Smith. Clearly, he was the point of contact for people that were investing in whatever these properties are. Now, one of the investors, and was speaking with Jack and Jeremy regarding the money, because the money was not invested into a property. And then, of course, they wanted the money back. And they asked, well, where is the money? And allegedly, Jack said, well, it's gone. So who knows where it went? We don't really know. You know, it's out there somewhere. I'll bet that when people watch this video, we're going to find some people that were victimized. I would be very surprised if that is not the case, if we don't find other victims out there of what's gone on with this particular situation. So
now Jeremy does mention how these lawsuits were dropped. The one that I'm aware of that I know was dropped because he did file Chapter 7 bankruptcy out of the state of Florida. And that's why that lawsuit was forced to be dropped. Now, I don't know how he got a judge to approve that particular quote unquote debt based on the way the money was collected, but he was successful in his bankruptcy filing and the lawsuit was dropped, essentially. If anybody is aware of criminal attorneys that would like to assist with this matter, please reach out to us via the email that I have.
I am going to go into some other pretty serious allegations here in just a minute. Yeah. So let's look at a video clip that Jeremy just put out. I believe it was just 2 nights ago. It's a longer video. I'm not going to show you the whole video, but I am going to show you a clip of the video, and then I'm going to share something with you that I believe is important for people to know. All right, watch this, please, and then we will talk.
Heart and their chest and their face should burn with the fear of God. Do not harm this little one. It's better for you to wrap 100-pound stone around your neck and throw it off the edge of a cliff. That's better for you than to mistreat a little one. God's serious about this stuff. People are like, oh my gosh, I just want it to be back to normal. I want things to be back to normal. No, he's purifying the church.
Okay. So he is referencing, in this video, he is specifically addressing Shawn, Cherie, and Jen and Jona, who he calls out. He does call out Jen and Jona in his first video. He also name drops other people at the end. But he is referencing the scripture that talks about, how it's better for a rope with a stone to be tied around one's neck than to harm a little one. Now, little one can be, doesn't automatically mean child, but with the way that this video is presented and the information that I have, that I can, some of which I can share with you and some of which I cannot, I believe he's talking about children. I think that's what he means. And in this video, he is calling for the wrath of God. There's a lot of anger there. And quite frankly, he's cursing them on camera. I mean, that's pretty much what that is. Scripture says, binding and loosing and cursing and blessing. And I have called curses down upon schemes of the enemy that involve people and that involve the removal of people from certain positions because they're a danger. He's talking about, judgment. I think, regarding the kind of severity of what I'm about to get into, I would, agree that there is an anger, that there's a very real anger. I don't want us to enter into a place of hatred or into a place that desires the damnation of people. We don't want to do that. We want to pray for people and hope that there is a repentance. And, you know, that's between them and God. But we also have to just say what we know, even if it's risky to say it. And I believe that he knows a lot that I don't know, but I believe he knows some of what I know. So I have two witnesses, and I'm going to share what they have given me permission to share. But first, I'm going to share this, okay? And this, I recalled this based on something that somebody else, another eyewitness, has told me in the last couple of weeks. And that information from that eyewitness, I cannot share. But I believe that it will be shared when that person is ready for it to be shared. So I want you to remember what I'm about to tell you as information comes out, because more information will come out. And I think that what I'm going to tell you will matter as more information comes out, if that makes sense. So this would have been late 2019, early 2020. I'm sitting in the office, and remember, their property is connected to the office. So it's all in one property, right? You've got the big house, you have the back studio. We worked in the offices adjacent to the studio. Above us, there's an accounting office that overlooks the studio with a window. I was working in the main foyer where there was a couple desks, and there were some coworkers there with me. I think there were one or two in the room with me. And I am working on my computer, and it's a company issued computer, a MacBook that I used while I was there. It had all of the documents on there and so forth. I'm on the Wi-Fi network that is connected to the property. And I think I was looking at emails or something of that nature. I was just working in the middle of the day. Now, and this is very graphic, okay? So I'm just going to warn you. This is very disturbing, what I'm going to tell you. All of a sudden, there was a video. It was like a video window just popped up. And I don't even recognize it. I didn't even recognize the media player, because I guess Mac has like QuickTime, or I don't even know what this was. It just all of a sudden popped up on my computer screen out of nowhere. And it was a video. There was a man in the video, and there was in a shed, or it looked like a shed or some kind of wooden house. It didn't even look like it was in the United States. It looked strange. It was very strange. It was, you know, this rundown looking wooden place, looking like it looked like a shed. And there were children. There were two children in the shed with this man. And I don't even want to describe the details. It's so disgusting. But the overall theme of the video was children that were being sexually tortured. Okay. So it was really disgusting. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my entire life, actually, to this day. And I hope I never, ever, ever see anything like it ever again. So I gasped or screamed, and I clicked out of it as fast as I could. It was so disgusting. And I called web crimes against children, and I reported it. And I just figured there was some kind of sick hacker or something like that. You know, never even occurred to me it could be anybody, like in relation to the property. Like, didn't even come into my brain, you know. And I'm not saying that I have any evidence that it is tied to that. I'm just saying I think you should remember this information. I think you should remember this information as more information comes out. I think it will matter later. Okay. So I'm going to share with you, I have a witness testimony. I have 2 witnesses, actually, that have come to me. And I am going to be very, 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 very vague in the information that I share with you about their experience. And the reason I'm going to be very vague is because I want to protect the victims, and I want to protect the identity of minor children involved. Okay. So the allegation itself is that there was ongoing, for a period of time, child-on-child sexual assault involving multiple victims, and it occurred inside of the Expression58 building and in multiple different residences of community members of Expression58. Okay? I will say this. The nature of what was described to me and the age of the children, these are prepubescent children, elementary age children, would lead me to believe, obviously, because this is abnormal behavior developmentally, that something had been done. Obviously, there's some kind of perpetrator that perpetrated first against the initiating child. Because this is abnormal behavior developmentally. It just doesn't happen. So when at some point when this was happening, these encounters, Jen Toledo was made aware of them. And there was a meeting with parents and with children, and allegedly Jen Toledo, who was the pastor of Expression58 with her husband Hona, told these children and parents, we're not going to speak about this outside of this group of us. Don't tell anybody what happened. So allegedly it was not reported. There was no formal investigation done. Law enforcement was not brought in. There was no investigation done regarding who any adult perpetrator may be that where the children learn that behavior. Now, I do have some education, actually formal education, on child development. And I also have training, formal training on child abuse reporting and how to identify child abuse, including sexual abuse. And one of the key things about child sexual abuse is that when children, specifically prepubescent children, right? Children that are not going, they haven't gone through puberty yet. If they start to exhibit sexual behaviors, and the sexual behaviors that were described to me are far above and beyond what is developmentally normal, and I know that for a fact. Okay, I can say that from the perspective of somebody who has worked with children for many years, somebody who has early childhood education units or college units, somebody who's taken multiple trainings, somebody who's worked with people in a variety of different areas that advocate for children that have gone through these things. This behavior is not normal. So this was learned. And that's kind of one of the key things they teach you when they teach you how to identify if a child is being sexually abused is, are they repeating behaviors that they would have had to have seen somewhere or something that was done to them. So these are very serious claims because, and there's, all by its little self, even if Jen was not a pastor, and even if Jen was not an advocate for children. And even if her church was not founded on justice, and even if Jen was not a mandated reporter, and even if, right? You can't tell a child, or any victim, but definitely not a child, not to tell somebody that somebody hurt them. You can't do that. So one of the things that I have done for years with children in an effort to prevent child abuse is to teach them that if somebody says to them, don't tell anybody this, that's their sign to tell somebody. Because if somebody's hurting you and it's being hidden, then something's wrong, right? Now, this is, I mean, I have 1,000 concerns with this. One of the main concerns would be, where was this behavior learned? And is there somebody out there that taught the behavior, that did this to an initial child, and then that child spread it, and it was ongoing, and then it was done to other children, and so on and so forth? Where is that person? How many people are there? Are there multiple people? I've had other conversations that I can't share, but I can tell you that I believe, based on these conversations and witness statements, that I do not believe that children are safe at Expression58, and I do not believe that victims of abuse will be heard there or protected there. I believe they will be silenced. So for as much as I am permitted to, I will speak on their behalf. And I will urge parents that have had children in those circles and gatherings, in people's homes, in people's in the children's ministry, and in the youth ministry. I was not aware of anything during the time that I was there. And had I been, I would certainly have called the police. But it sounds like things have happened there that should not have happened, and they have not been reported. So I would be surprised if this is not the only incident. Or I would be surprised if this is the only incident, right? I would check on your kids. I would ask your children, your minor children and your adult children, some very specific questions. Now, Expression58 is based on, it's named after, actually, Isaiah 58, and this is Isaiah 58, 6-7. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen, to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? I have to tell you, these last few weeks of my life have been very painful to process through. And the more that I talk to people, the more that I learn. And the more that I am faced with the gravity of how the Lord speaks of the dangers that are in the churches. And, this was an issue 2,000 years ago, and it is an issue today. It's an issue today. So I want to really encourage people to pray for discernment, because all of us, except for one that I'm aware of, that we're involved with Shawn, really, 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 really love the Lord. And we have the Holy Spirit. And we all thought we had discernment. But there are spirits that have tried to silence the prophets for thousands of years. And they will continue to try to silence the prophets. And they will try to use control and manipulation and mocking. And at the end of the day, when the Lord wants something exposed, it gets exposed. Even if he has to bring an orphan girl into the king's palace and allow her to be subjected to his depravity in order to expose it at his table. Okay. So more information will come out regarding things and people. And I would like to think that I will not be surprised, but based on the last 4 weeks of my life, I think I still will be. But I want the church to know about this information, so that the church can protect itself, so that the flock can be protected. And for those of you that are out there and you have information, I would love to encourage you to not allow fear to silence you. And Jeremy, I would ask you, as you reference these little ones in your video, and I do believe you're referencing children. I believe that. And I understand that there are things that they know about you that none of us know yet. And I know that there are many, many things that you know about them that we don't know yet. But despite all of the consequences of coming forward, I would urge you, for the sake of all the little ones and everybody else impacted, I would urge you to say what you know. Because now would be a really good time. It's a little late, but it would be a lot better now than never. And for those of you that have information also that you are afraid to share, don't let the devil silence you. The warfare leading up to this video was insane. And at the end of the day, though, you know, everything that we have belongs to the Lord. Everything I have belongs to the Lord. You know, my ministry, my family, anything I have that's a blessing, it's the Lord's. He gave it to me. And he gave me a voice. And we teach the little children to use their voices and to not be silent. And there are many of you out there that are still silent, and I would urge you to speak. Not for the sake of malice, not for the sake of revenge, but for the sake of truth. Because truth ultimately is what is going to cleanse the church. And the Lord is separating the wheat from the tares. He is separating the wolves from the sheep. And he is identifying those that have come in to prey on the flock. And he is also identifying those who started genuinely with a mission to serve him and got lost in the ways of the world. that he is called to repentance and that have not repented. And we must pray that the Lord urges people to fall on their face and repent, because this stuff is a really big deal. To stand before God and people and partner and with all of these organizations that work with sex trafficking victims and that are helping, the impoverished and the orphan, the widow, to stand before God and silence the one that's in your own church and not let them have their voice. And for what? For what? What good is building a church if people are so hurt that they leave the faith? What good is building a church if so many people are traumatized? The years later, they're still working through it. And people will, and they are leaving the faith. This is the thing that's really devastating about this is, as a Christian that's been walking with the Lord for 20-something years, my whole adult life, I am rooted deeply enough in the Lord and in my faith and in the testimonies and the things that I've witnessed and in the power of God. I am rooted deeply enough in the Lord for this to not destroy my faith. But if I was 19 or 20 years old in the place that I was then, in that time of my life, I think this would have really shaken my faith. To have people that I trusted in power and authority that have sat with me in my deepest moments of distress to find out what was actually going on underneath. I think that would have really, really shaken my faith. And there are young people flocking out of the church because of it. Because these young people think we're just all like this. They think we're just all fakes. It's just none of it's real. Because, how can it be with all of these frauds on stage? This man out here who's just traveling from country to country, calling out things from social media, this man who just exposes himself to his staff. How can it be real? They say. It all just must be fake. They're all like that. Because I can sit from my perspective, having tasted and seen that the Lord is good, and knowing that these things are real. And the Lord does give information, very specific information, for ministry purposes, not for self-gain. There are things and mysteries that the Lord does reveal. It's real. The Lord heals people. I've seen it. The Lord makes demons flee. I've seen it. The Lord does know the stranger in the crowd's name. He knows. It's real. But all of these young people think it's fake now. So people need to get on their faces and repent. And then perhaps if we can see true repentance, maybe some of these people will come back. If they can see true humility. Because right now all they see is deception. All they see is deception. Lord, I pray that you would bring forth the fullness of exposure of everything that has been hidden. I thank you, God, that you shine light into the darkness, and that the darkness can't stand. I pray that you would come and that you would purify your church. And in Jesus' name, I bless Shawn and Cherie and Jen and Jona and Jeremy and Jack and everybody else who has been involved that has caused pain. I bless them in Jesus' name. And I ask you, Lord, that you would make every wrong thing right. And I pray that you would, everyone watching this, I pray that you would agree with me in that prayer. And that you would pray for genuine repentance, and that you would wish and hope for the best for people. There's a difference between forgiveness and trust. There's a difference between forgiveness and people continuing in the pulpit. There's a difference between those things. I think Bethel has gotten confused about those things, clearly. And it seems like there's been some confusion as well regarding what was known of Shawn and allowing him to be in the pulpit. There's a lot of confusion there, but we can still hold boundaries with people and be cautious of their voice while releasing them to the Lord and genuinely caring about them. So I thank you for watching this long video. And as more information comes out that I'm permitted to share, I will share it. And I would encourage everyone to be in prayer and be in Christian community and be in the Word, because now is the time. Thank you.